everybody. I'm Jack Hammer, and just want to come in and talk about a couple of the hot topics going on with the 49ers this week. In particular, the breaking news yesterday that, I don't know if it's breaking news, but the news that came out yesterday when us in the Bay Area media were able to get a chance to finally talk to DeForest Buckner after his trade to the Colts. And that news was really that the San Francisco 49ers never even offered Buckner close to the 4-year, $84 million contract that he eventually would sign with Indianapolis. And I said that information came directly from him yesterday during a conference call with the Bay Area media. As you know, the trade of Buckner and the contract that followed, it's been a topic this week, especially because the former 49ers defensive tackle is coming back to the Bay Area on Sunday night as a member of the Colts, getting ready to take on his old team. Kind of rehashing that, if you go back at the end of the 2019 season, as it began to wind down, there were a number of question marks about this team, what the organization was going to do moving forward. There were a number of players, a number of starters who had contracts that were going to be expiring, and it was going to be some tough decisions that were going to have to come down, and who was going to stay, who was going to go. The 49ers eventually decided to move on from Buckner. They traded him to Indianapolis in exchange for the 13th pick in the draft in 2020. The 49ers eventually would move back another spot from that 13th pick and draft a replacement, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw. And then really even take that, let's forget about Kinlaw for a minute. Let's keep it back to the trade time. Because shortly after that trade was made, the reports came out that Buckner had signed a new 4-year, $84 million deal with the Colts. This was great for the 49ers because the general reaction to that deal was that it made sense for San Francisco to move on. It really got the 49ers management off the hook. Because, after all, the way that the 49ers were able to spin it, they had to find a way to re-sign Jimmy Ward. They had big contracts on the horizon for George Kittle, Fred Warner. There was a lot of things going on. And when that news broke that Buckner was going to be getting a 4-year, $84 million deal, the main way that people looked at that was there's no way that the 49ers are going to be able to have a defensive tackle making $21 million a year. That doesn't make sense. And obviously that's why the 49ers moved on. Like he just wanted the money, took the money and ran. But in reality, the feeling that San Francisco made the right choice, like I said, it gained traction once the team then announced shortly thereafter that they had re-signed Eric Armstead to a 5-year, $85 million contract. Whoa, everybody says $21 million for Buckner, $17 for Armstead. That's $4 million a year. That doesn't make sense. Obviously the 49ers made the right choice here. But in reality, that they didn't. The deal here is that the reports of Buckner's extension, one of the things that it failed to mention when they came out was that it was actually an extension of his rookie contract. It wasn't all brand new money. He still had another year left on that deal, which made it a 5-year, $96.378 million deal, which meant that the average annual value wasn't actually the $21 million that everybody was reporting. It was around $19.3 million. This isn't anything new. Agents always are going to be working to make sure that they pump up the perceived value of contracts for the clients. It's good for business. They do it all the time. They did it here. And in a lot of cases, I think 49er fans didn't take the time to really look at those deals and see how they were set up and realize that how close the 49ers were to keeping a player that is an all-pro level and a Pro Bowler. Had the 49ers offered the same extension as he would eventually receive from Indianapolis, that 4-year, $84 million deal, while using the structure of the contract that was given to Armstead to manipulate the salary cap, the 49ers would have been able to keep a proven team leader and an all-pro in DeForest Buckner, along with making all of the moves that they made to bring back their core. Let me explain that to you a little bit. In the NFL, you have your contract, you have a salary cap number, but your salary cap number doesn't really represent how much money you're getting paid in that given year. The cash to player is actually different than the cap number. So although Eric Armstead looked like he had a $6 million cap hit in 2020, he actually was paid $20 million. The teams can manipulate the cap hits however they need in order to get themselves under the salary cap. And in this case, if the 49ers had done that with DeForest Buckner instead of choosing to go with Eric Armstead, they would have actually come out with more money. Let me explain. The total cap spend for Armstead, Jimmy Ward, Fred Warner, and Trent Williams, whom the 49ers acquired from a trade, along with Javon Kinlaw, has been $47 million against the salary cap for the 49ers in 2020 and 2021 combined. Had the 49ers instead gotten rid of Armstead, they wouldn't have had to draft and kept Buckner. They wouldn't have had to draft Javon Kinlaw either. If the 49ers had used Armstead's contract structure as far as cap hits and those kind of things, the total spend for 2021 and 2022 combined on the salary cap to keep DeForest Buckner, Jimmy Ward, Fred Warner, George Kittle, add Trent Williams, would have been $45.3 million. Those numbers are assuming that it would have taken the same contract given to Buckner from Indianapolis, meaning another 4 years at $84 million. That may not have been the case, however, because Buckner has stated multiple times, as he did on Wednesday, that he was willing to take less money to stay with the 49ers than his agent felt that he was worth. He actually went to John Lynch and said, some way, somehow, I want to be here, but I didn't want to take too big of a pay cut because I knew what I was actually worth. The 49ers held a hard line on what they were willing to offer and lost more than they received. Buckner was a respected team leader and someone who really, quite frankly, made everyone else around him better by opening up things for the defense. And without Buckner, the 49ers defensive line has continued to be strong, but it's still not anywhere close to what they were in 2019. And that's part of why the 49ers have more losses than they do in 2021. I hope that's been clear with the way that I explained it. Now, just to kind of take that another step further, one of the reasons that I've heard so much about the 49ers needing to get rid of DeForest Buckner and go with a guy like Javon Kinlaw, who is more of a run stuffer on the defensive line, was that it was going to help their defense in the running game. Well, if you take a look at the 49ers 2019 defense, they gave up 113 yards rushing per game, 169 yards passing. In 2021, the 49ers defense is allowing 113 yards rushing per game, the same number they were in 2019. So the run defense hasn't gotten better. But the difference is the pass defense has fallen off from 169 yards in 2019 to 217 yards allowed so far through the first 5 games this year. Now, if you can just continue to take a look through the numbers, in San Francisco in 2019, with DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, obviously, Dee Ford, and Nick Bosa, and a host of others, they had an adjusted sack rate of 9%, meaning 9% of the time they were either recording a sack or they were forcing the quarterback to throw the ball away, certain things like that. One of the second best in the NFL. That number obviously dipped in 2020. There was no Buckner, there was no Ford, there was no Bosa, what have you. But this year, in 2021, you have Ford out there, you have Bosa out there, and you have Armstead still there. The only difference is that you no longer have DeForest Buckner in the middle, and the team is still at only 6.1%, which ranks 19th in the NFL. That's a big drop. And part of the reason that's a big deal is the lack of a pass rush often will result in fewer turnovers, which in turn hurts the offense. The reason it hurts the offense is if you look back at 2019, the 49ers had the 4th best starting field position in the NFL. They started right around the 34, 35 yard line. This year, the 49ers currently rank 30th in the league. And in fact, the 49ers average starting field position so far in 2021 has been the worst they faced since 2015 when Jim Tomsula was the head coach. So a lot of things going on there, a lot of things that I was kind of bringing up. And it all goes back to the fact that if the 49ers just wanted to keep DeForest Buckner, they could have kept him. And the narrative around this, that they wouldn't have been able to sign everybody else that they did, is quite frankly false. Now, I know that wasn't the title of the show. Let me go ahead and look through here and see real quick before I get to the next step, because what I was just talking about with DeForest Buckner and the things that it's done with the defensive line actually gets into how the 49ers offense can improve. Let me just kind of look through and see if there's any questions. So like Eric said, so for an extra $2 million per year, they could have had Buckner instead of Armstead. Yeah, roughly in that area. It's a little bit higher than that. I think it was 2.3, give or take a couple, maybe, $30,000 or $50,000 or somewhere in there. But yeah, right in that number. Pioneer says how to improve. Stop drafting inconsistently in the first 3 rounds. Absolutely. Stop hiring your former players, Kyle. Put more effort in efficient play calling for Lance. Make the cornerback position more of a priority. Those are all things as well. Definitely need to improve their drafting. That's not been very good at all. Hey, Luke, how you doing? Thanks for joining. I know you like to come around quite a bit. Should the 49ers trade George Kittle for D-Buck and Hines? I'm not sure who Hines is, but I don't see Indianapolis wanting to trade for a tight end. They have a pretty good tight end group already. I don't think they need George Kittle, so I'm not sure if that's one that they'd like to do. As far as trading George Kittle, I think if you're looking at trading a guy like Kittle, that would make sense. And the reason I say trading Kittle makes sense, his contract's going to be getting up there pretty high pretty soon. And unfortunately, he's continuously getting hurt. So, having the injury issues that he's had now, going on the 3rd year in a row that he's missing time due to injury, as his contract is getting ready to start escalating, if you can move him, get out from underneath that and get a first-round draft pick for him, I think that's a deal you make. But the only thing is, it's going to take away from one of the items that we're going to get to here in just a second. Eric says, everyone says Kyle's offense takes a year to learn. Is that why he seems only interested in his former players? I think that definitely is something that plays into it, because that way it doesn't take them as long to get up to speed, and they can get going relatively quickly. This whole year to learn the offense thing, I understand NFL offenses are difficult, but if with the way that free agency is right now in the NFL, ever since they did that, starting back in 1994, it's gotten more and more players changing teams every year. You're gonna move out a good 2 offensive players every year that you're going to have to bring back in. Look at the 49ers this year. They have 2 rookies at running back. They have some issues. They have a center that's been here before, been with Shanahan before, but the rookies that they brought in are struggling a little bit. And I just think that you need to have a system that allows you to play your guys that first year that you get them, because you only have a rookie on a rookie deal for 4-5 years, depending if they're a first rounder. You can use the first round the 5th year option and get a 5th year out of it. But if you're wasting a year just trying to get a guy ready, that throws you into free agency sooner without being able to get good use out of them. And really, that's what that's about, right? And then as far as the offense and how you're going to improve the offense, that's really what we talked about, what I titled this as. The thing that where the 49ers are struggling the most on offense is, as we talked about here at the beginning, the 49ers defense is putting them in bad situations. They're consistently being, their average starting position is right around their own 25-yard line. Their special teams isn't very good. They don't return the ball very well. When you watch a kickoff return for the 49ers, if the ball doesn't go into the end zone, the likelihood that the 49ers are going to get out to the 25 is low. They don't return the ball very well on their kickoffs. So that becomes a little bit of an issue for the 49ers there. The other issue that they have is on the offensive side of the ball, starting so far back, where it really becomes an issue for them is they're just not very good in explosive plays. And this is something that was talked about today by their fullback, Juszczyk. The 49ers currently were ranked 28th in explosive plays. That's 8% of their total offensive plays have been explosives, meaning plus 15 yards, I believe it is, on the run, and plus 20 yards in the pass. And for the 49ers, they can't manage that right now. How do they fix that? What do they do? And I'll give you an idea, and you tell me if this sounds crazy or not. How about you use the guy that you used a first-round draft pick for last year? Get the ball in Brandon Ayuk's hands. Instead of continually talking about what he needs to do better, every time he's got the ball in his hands so far this year, we definitely saw it last week against Arizona on a couple of occasions. We've seen it in a previous game as well. First off, the guy makes ridiculous catches. That's one of them. And the other thing with Ayuk is that he has playmaking ability with the ball in his hands. We saw that on Sunday in Arizona on I think it was a second reception. It was a 2nd and 25, I believe it was. He's running a curl route. He's well covered on one side. He basically makes a one-armed catch with his left hand. He's got 4 Cardinals around him, and he's able to escape that and get down the field for a first down. A 26-yard gain, tack on another 15 yards for an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, I believe it was, or a roughing on Arizona, and that 26-yard gain becomes a 41-yard gain. That's an explosive play and a half right there. That's what you need, and you're not giving your best player the ball. So maybe instead of fighting and talking about how he needs to improve and do whatever it is that he needs to do to earn his touches, maybe start getting the ball to a playmaker like Brandon Ayuk instead of throwing the ball to, I don't know, Mohamed Sanu, who you cut last year after 3 games because he wasn't one of the best receivers on your team. Maybe that's a starting point for you. Beyond that, the other thing too, the running game. The 49ers running game this year has started off good in the first quarter, but it's taken a little bit of a drop since then, but for a couple of weeks, and then it kind of started to bounce back. They need to get the ball into the hands of Trey Sermon. There's no reason you traded up for Trey Sermon. You traded up last year for Brandon Ayuk. You're not using him. You traded up this year for Trey Sermon. You're not using him. Why? Why are you trading up for these guys if you're not going to put them in the game? And that's really kind of where it starts and where it stops with the 49ers. They need to have more explosive plays on offense because their defense isn't helping them out. The defense is playing good. That doesn't mean the defense is playing bad when I say the defense is helping out. What the defense isn't doing is the defense isn't sacking the quarterback, and the defense isn't forcing turnovers. Forcing turnovers, sacking the quarterback, hitting the quarterback, doing those 2 things, those are going to give you better field position in the long run. And that's part of the reason why their field position was so good in 2019. It wasn't the kickoff returns. It wasn't the punt returns. Because if you look at the punt return and kickoff return averages from 2019 and compare that to this year, the difference in kickoff and punt returns is a half of a yard negative. So it's not like they were having great returns and on the punts and kicks in 2019. Their defense dominated. They sacked the quarterback. They turned the ball over. The 49ers defense this year, 2 turnovers. They don't hit the quarterback. They need to hit the quarterback. They need to get turnovers, like I said, and they need to get the ball to their most explosive playmakers. The other thing that they're dealing with, just kind of going back to the whole deal with Buckner and that trade. Yeah, sure, the 49ers were able to have 2 guys. They were able to keep Eric Armstead. They were able to get the 13th pick in the draft. Awesome. The 13th pick in the draft sounds good, and I was all on board with it. I thought it was an okay deal if he was able to somewhat give them the numbers that you got from Buckner. That's kind of what it had to happen, right? You also had to have Eric Armstead continue to play at the rate that he was playing. Eric Armstead is a 1-year wonder. He had 10 sacks that year. I believe it was 9 or 10 sacks in 2019. He was never close to that before. He wasn't close to it last year. And he's not going to get close to it again this year. We're 5 games into the season. He has 1 sack. He has 2 quarterback hits. If you go back and you look at the numbers with these guys over their time, over the last 2 years, Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw in 2020 and 2021, they've combined for 6 sacks between the 2 of them. Most of those are from Armstead. And 20 quarterback hits. DeForest Buckner, 11.5 sacks, 32 quarterback hits. One player that you traded away is doing better and putting up better numbers than the 2 guys that you have that replaced him. So just some things to think about, and really going back to that, it's going to be interesting and fun to watch this Sunday night game. You have a big rainstorm coming in, and that could play into the 49ers' favor. It might force the 49ers to run the ball and stay committed to the run. Hopefully they stay committed to running the ball behind their left side of their offensive line because the right side isn't very good. They have Daniel Brunskill over there at right guard, and unfortunately they have the guy that they used a second round pick in 2021, not even able to dress out. He's really their third guy on their depth chart right now at right guard. They have Tom Compton ahead of him as far as the active players. He's struggling. The center, Alex Mack, he's struggling. This offense needs to run the ball to the left side. They need to be able to come up with some explosive plays. Defensive wise, they need to come out and show that they can get after the quarterback. And we'll see what happens. This is early in the season still. I understand we're at week 5. We're 21 games into this post DeForest Buckner era. Part of the reason that this is such a hot topic, like I said, is the fact that they're coming back. That's why we're talking about it now. But I've been saying this since this deal was done. I said it all throughout last year, and just happened to come back up again this year. So just a couple of things to think about as we head in. Looking to see if there was any other comments. And Dan says, Armstead benefited from having Buckner. That was it. Absolutely. Eric Armstead definitely benefited from having DeForest Buckner. Eric Armstead benefited also from having Dee Ford outside of him, but not as much as he benefited from having DeForest Buckner on the other side. DeForest Buckner allowed that 49ers defense to do so many things. Not even talking just about Armstead. They were able to move him around and force double teams in pass rushing, double and triple teams that freed up everybody else, freed up the linebackers for blitzes, it freed up the secondary guys for blitzes. Go back and watch that 2019 team and the number of times that they were able to get guys free on blitzes, and then go watch what Eric Armstead was doing or what DeForest Buckner was dealing with in the middle. And he still was able to put up 7.5 sacks that year. So Piner asks, Jack, do you have a prediction on Kyle Shanahan's future with this team? I think that Shanahan's got this year and next. I don't think the 49ers are going to fire him after this year unless they don't win another game. But I think what's going to happen is they just went out and they just made the trade for the rookie quarterback. I don't foresee them getting rid of the coach after one season with the rookie. I think they're going to maybe give him 2, and then we'll see what happens from there. The guy that I think that you need to keep an eye on here is John Lynch. John Lynch is trying to sell everybody over the last week and a half on his draft picks being ready to play, and that some of these guys are going to get on the field this year, what have you. Okay, then if that's the case, why do you continuously go out and sign veterans off the street to take their roles, to not allow them onto the field? So and Lynch is the guy that I think is a little bit easier to replace in this deal. Although I think if you were going to replace him, it can't be Adam Peters. You can't do the deal where you get rid of John Lynch, you bring a guy from inside the organization, because you need to kind of revamp that a little bit. I think in some ways you need to have a personnel guy come in that's going to take over a little bit as far as the decision making on who's on the team, and not and be a little bit more forceful with Shanahan, and really allow Shanahan just to be the coach, not be the personnel guy. I know there's always going to be some communication between the two, but those decisions you need to have I think in the 49ers case, they'd be better off with somebody other than Kyle Shanahan making those decisions. If you go back and you look at the players that the 49ers have drafted that have Kyle Shanahan's name all over them, pretty much those guys have failed. You go back to the original draft, and there was Joe I don't remember his name right now, the running back. Dante Pettis was the guy that he wanted. Apparently, Kyle Shanahan was all over wanting to Brandon Ayuk, and that's why they traded up for Brandon Ayuk. So there's a lot of things that when it comes to Kyle Shanahan on his personnel side haven't worked out. While Runa says, Jack, as the owner, I want some tough decisions from you. Please fire Kyle. I would give Kyle Shanahan one more year as well. I don't think that he deserves it. Thanks, Dan. Joe Williams. That's right. I don't think he deserves to be fired quite yet. I think he's. I think people are starting to realize some things about Kyle Shanahan's offense and the fact that overall, um, his offenses have been up and down. He's been in the league. This is his 14th season. The 13 previous seasons, he has been in the top. His offenses have scored in the top half of the league four times in 13 seasons. Compare that number to what Bill Walsh did, for example, in Cincinnati before he moved on to Stanford and eventually to the 49ers. Compare that number to what Bill Belichick did on the defensive side of the ball during his time as the defensive coordinator in New York, and then what his defenses have done since he's become a head coach. The term genius gets thrown around with Kyle Shanahan, and it's not deserved. Not based off of the results. He has some fancy plays from time to time. His teams will put up some good yardage from time to time, but when it comes to what's most important, and that's scoring points and winning games, his teams don't do it. I think his winning record, as far as wins and his winning record seasons, that pretty much matches his offensive totals. I think he's had 4 so far through 13 years, and I think he had 1 8-8 season mixed in there too. So there's just some things to think about. Let me see what else there is over here. Just kind of taking a look. Well, I like this one from Eric. Imagine if they still had Matt Breida right now. Yeah, and that's another good point. Matt Breida was a player that they got rid of. They could have had him under contract. They had him under contract, actually, and they decided to trade him to Miami. And I think Matt Breida is another player that he's a doghouse guy. For whatever reason, he fell into Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. He was the guy he was the breakout player, he was the home run hitter. He was the explosive running back for the 49ers in 2019 before they started utilizing Raheem Mostert. And a lot of the reason that Breida got put on the bench was because he had a couple of times where he didn't hold on to the ball. But in reality, Breida had less fumbles than Mostert. He fumbled. He had more attempts more touches on the ball per fumble than Mostert. So he was actually better at holding onto the ball than Mostert in 2019. And then they ended up trading him away. And the 49ers really missed that explosive running back. That's one of the problems that they have. Let's see what else we have. Boruna says, my biggest fear is whether Kyle would ruin Trey Lance. I would haunt him forever if he does that. Well, here's the thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens. The Trey Lance deal, we're still early on. I just hope that the next time that he gets into the game as a starting quarterback or as a quarterback period, he's treated as a quarterback and not as a running back. That'd be awesome. I understand that, if you look at the game against Arizona, they did throw the ball a lot with them, but it was all out of shotgun. It didn't look like the 49ers offense. And for him to have 12 runs on run plays and only 4 that were scrambles, that's not okay when you have only 12 carries for the rest of your team. So I'd be worried about him getting Lance hurt. I don't know if you can say that he got hurt because of all the runs, but he definitely didn't help. Dan asks if Shanahan's talked about where Hurd is at right now. Haven't heard the latest. Hurd is not anywhere close to being ready. He was asked about it, and he didn't really give much of an answer. But there's definitely he's not close. He's just sitting there eating up a spot on the team. They need to, for whatever reason, they have guys like Jalen Hurd that they really like, and they're trying to do whatever they can to bring him along. And they got a guy like Brandon Ayuk who's been out there doing it, and he can't even get the ball thrown his way. All right, and then no, you got enough going on, Runa. You don't need to trade your life to witness 5 Super Bowls. $75,000 is reasonable for that. Yeah, no, I was lucky. I've been lucky to see 5 Super Bowls in my lifetime, and hopefully the Friars are going to win another one for you guys here in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think it's going to come this year. Uh, Next year seems unlikely. Maybe 2023. We'll see. Uh, Here we go, real quick. Go to this one first. Forget about Hurd. What about Trent Sherfield? Dude looked good in the preseason, especially when playing with Lance. He did. And here's the deal, though, with Sherfield and Lance, both those guys, they blew it up against backups. Sherfield was blowing it up in practice against backups. Same thing with Lance. Lance didn't really play against the first team defense. When he did play against the first team defense in the preseason, he didn't do all that well. At least as close to a first team defense when he was playing with the starting 49ers offense or what they were putting out for their starters. So they ate on some weaker competition. There's a reason that Trent Sherfield only had, I think, 13 receptions in his career, or he had a low number in Arizona. There's a reason why his numbers in Arizona were so low. Think about this for a minute. Arizona let Trent Sherfield walk. They drafted a rookie wide receiver. That rookie wide receiver made one of the biggest plays in the game against the 49ers 2 Sundays ago. The 49ers don't get their rookies involved in the game. Trent Sherfield isn't anywhere close to Rondale Moore. That's the reason why Arizona let him go. The 49ers play money ball. You have to do that to a certain extent, but if you're going to do that, the guys that you're spending money on have to produce. And the guys that you're spending your top draft picks have to produce. The 49ers don't allow their draft picks to do anything. I understand the Lance deal. That kind of makes sense. The Ayuk deal makes none. The Trey Sermon situation makes no sense that he's behind Elijah Mitchell. Although I really liked Mitchell during the preseason. Drew says, thanks for your work, Jack. Love the film breakdowns. Kyle's ego has to be put aside for the team to ever succeed. Thanks. First off, thank you very much on the film breakdowns. Put a lot of time and effort into those, and definitely be looking forward to getting back to that after the game this week against the Colts. As far as Kyle's ego, I don't know if it's so much ego as he just needs to start getting out in front of things, and he needs to stop trying to be Bill Belichick. He needs to stop trying to be a hard ass. Sorry for the language. When, quite frankly, he hasn't earned it yet. His players, supposedly love him, but he just hasn't earned it. And the 49ers are under 500. The 49ers have never made the playoffs after starting the season 2-3. The latest they've ever been and made it was they were 3-4 in 1985, and they ended up being the last wild card team. That year was when they had 5 teams make the wild card. Last team the 49ers have come back from a 2-3 start to make the playoffs was 1972, which is before I was born, and probably a lot of you that are watching this show. So Shanahan just needs to start being a guy that puts his arm, as my partner on Hammer and Nails, Jesse Naylor, wrote about a week ago for All 49ers Sports Illustrated. Kyle Shanahan needs to start putting his arms around the players and pumping them up instead of tearing them down. That's one thing. And the other part of it is the 49ers just need to get their stories together. You listen to these stories, that the things that are being said, and they contradict each other constantly. Whether it's something that John Lynch is saying, he says one thing, and then you have Kyle Shanahan come out and he says something that's opposite. Their stories don't even match up. You had that 2 weeks ago with the whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Jimmy Garoppolo's got a bruised calf, a calf contusion. Garoppolo comes up to the stage, and before you know it, it goes from a calf contusion to a pulled muscle to a strain in about 30 seconds. So what's going on with the 49ers? It's an interesting situation. They're definitely dealing with, I think, some communication issues over there. You know, they traded away an All-Pro and got a guy who uh, isn't even able to practice and has, I think, 1.5 sacks to his first 21 games. Piner says, if Kyle is this old and doesn't see a problem with himself, I don't believe in him. I'm done wasting my time. If he proves me wrong, I'd be happy. Well, I think that's really the way that everybody should be looking at this. The 49ers have only had one season. This is his 5th year. If they don't have a winning season this year, it's going to be 1 out of 5, 4 out of 5 being under 500. And I think it is at the point where it's not, oh, look what he did everywhere else or whatever his reputation is. It's time to actually start putting it out there and winning games. Chris says they should use Hasty more when healthy. Yes and no. Hasty has a little bit of a fumbling issue that almost bit him in the Philadelphia game, but I do like him from the fact that he does have some explosiveness to him, and he's a good runner. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. We saw him do a good job with this, in the screen game, especially in that Philadelphia game. And of the backs the 49ers have, he's probably the best at that right now. So we'd definitely like to see what they can do with Hasty. And then as far as Mitchell or Sermon, who do I like better or who do I like more between those two? I want to see more of Trey Sermon. Elijah Mitchell looked really good in training camp. And part of the reason I think that he looked so good was that he was getting most of his reps with the 2s and the 3s, more of it even with the 3s, because you had just the way that rotation was going for whatever reason. You had in training camp, the way that they were running it was you had running with the first team was Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert. The second team, most of those reps were getting taken by Wayne Gallman, who's not even with the team anymore. And then you had Mitchell, who was taking the 13 reps. That's pretty much the way it broke down. Every once in a while, Mitchell would get some reps with the 2s and so on. But for the most part, Mitchell was running with the 2s, with the 3s, and Gallman, who they let go, was getting the reps with the 2s. Eric says the only coaches since 1994 to lose a Super Bowl and then win one with the same team are Bill Belichick, 8 years after his loss, and Bill Cowher, who did it 10 years after loss. That's a really good one. That's an awesome number to bring up. That's not something that I'd ever looked up. That's cool. That's a good one. And it's a similar situation that the 49ers are dealing with at the quarterback position. There's only been one quarterback who's ever even made it back to the Super Bowl, let alone won a Super Bowl, after losing their first time there. That didn't eventually become a Hall of Famer, and that's Craig Morton. He lost a Super Bowl with the Broncos. Oh, excuse me, with the Cowboys first, and then he was with the Broncos and took them to a Super Bowl. Lost both of them, but he's the only quarterback that's ever lost a Super Bowl in their first time and made it back. Who isn't in the Hall of Fame? The other guys are Jim Kelly is one of them. John Elway is another. Fran Tarkenton. So there's some other ones. I don't remember all their names right off the top of my head. I think Bob Greasy was another. But all those other quarterbacks eventually made it to the Hall of Fame. So that's a really good one. And like Piner says, thanks for the knowledge. I like that. That's a really good one. Hey, got some smart people in this group tonight. They should cut Robbie Gould and pick up a free agent. Hey, in the NFL, unless you're a kicker who consistently can make field goals from 55 yards on in, I don't think you deserve the kind of money that Robbie Gould gets paid to do that. Gould is very hit and miss outside of out of 50, and maybe you start looking at the money that the 49ers are spending. We started this whole deal off about how they had to get rid of Buckner because they needed to save money, and it was one of the ways that they were going to do it because Buckner was going to be cheaper. Well, you're spending a lot of money on a kicker. What What if we kept Buckner, drafted Tristan Wirfs, and traded Armstead? Well, see, this that would have been a really good way of going about it, but that wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be able. The only reason that they were there at 13, where Wirfs got drafted in the first place by Tampa, was because of the Buckner trade. The 49ers weren't going to get the 13th pick in the draft by trading Armstead. They also couldn't have traded Armstead unless they went out and gave him tagged him and then signed him, because he was a free agent already. So that's the only issue. That's one of the issues with that one. And plus, like I said, Armstead wouldn't have been able to get you the 13th pick. Yeah, and Luke mentions that here. There would have been no pick to take Wirfs. So, yeah. So that's what I wanted to come on tonight. Kind of, I wanted to break down kind of what's been going on in the with the 49ers this week. The whole DeForest Buckner piece has been definitely something that has been a hot topic around the 49ers because the Colts are coming in. I just think that people need to take a few minutes and really look into the numbers that went into that into the deal for Buckner, because he wasn't. It was $21 million in new money per year, but that was spread out over 5 plus the money from his rookie 5th-year option. And Luke says, instead, trade Buckner, draft Wirfs, use the money on a free agent cornerback. Yeah, the only thing with that, and it's not a bad idea, I would go there too, in a way. The only thing that would concern me with Wirfs is just given he's a right tackle, and he was a right tackle all along in college and so on. And we've seen offensive linemen really struggle with moving from one side to the other. We saw that in Detroit with Penei Sewell having to move over from the left side to the right side. He struggled, in training camp in the preseason there, and then played pretty well when he got moved back to the left side for the season opener against Bosa. We're seeing it in San Francisco as I think a big part of the reason as to why Aaron Banks is struggling. I think it's also part of the reason why Jalen Moore is playing as well as he is that Jalen Moore was a left tackle in college, and he's being used as a left tackle now with the 49ers. They haven't tried to move him over to the right side. It's pretty much, while he is kind of in a swing tackle role, we haven't seen him have to really go over and play on the right side in a game yet. It's all been on the left for the most part. Eric says, I think the 49ers cornerback situation is a bit overblown. Yes, we have our problems, but so do 20 other teams. Our D-line makes up for a lot of that. I do agree with this to a certain extent, in that I think the cornerback situation might be a bit overblown. The guys that they have been able to come in have been able to do okay, but maybe that's part of the problem as well. Maybe some of the stuff with the defensive line is the fact that you don't have the pass rush. You don't have quite the skill on the back end. And because you're not hitting the quarterback, you're not sacking the quarterback, more balls are getting thrown into the air. And then on top of that, you have cornerbacks that aren't quite as good the last 2 years. And so they're taking PIs to because they're beat and they don't know where the ball is. And so they're taking a PI, a pass interference. So instead of, giving up a 40-yard completion, they're taking a 25-yard penalty. So it doesn't show up in the passing yards that way, but it shows up in the penalty yards, and it shows up eventually on the scoreboard. So I do see this one a little bit. I think it goes a little bit of both ways. Cool. I think I'm going to shut it down now. It's been about 45 minutes. Like I said, I wanted to come on, just talk a little bit about DeForest Buckner, talk about a little bit about the Flyers offense and their lack of explosive plays this season as another reason why they're struggling to put up points on the board. It's that combination of bad field position, and then on top of that, not being able to gain explosive plays that's really biting them this year, I think. So we'll see what happens. Sunday night's going to be an interesting game with this weather that's supposed to be coming into the Bay Area this weekend. And so I'll definitely be back, though, tomorrow with a little bit of a breakdown on the game, as far as giving you my 5 questions to look for and watch for during the game. And then I'll also be back on Sunday with Sunil for the 49ers pregame game day preview show. So thank you, everybody who joined tonight. Thank you for the positive comments over on the side there. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, comment, all those kind of things help with the analytics for YouTube. And the more folks that we can get to watch this, the better it is. And the sooner we can maybe generate some additional goodies for you guys in terms of the graphics and things like that we can use when we're doing those film breakdowns. So have a great night, everybody. And I'll be back tomorrow. Talk to you soon.